Hey, you guys. Hello, how are you? I am coming to you live this week from my daughter Helena's bedroom. We used to have Elsa up there, but she took Elsa down and replaced it with the Dreamcatcher. So I'm just gonna chat for a few minutes while I wait for a few of you to join. So, for those of you, hi Cindy! For those of you who may not know me, my name is Catherine Oster, and I am a certified facilitator with Access Consciousness. And I live in St. Walburg, Saskatchewan, a small town, and we are having a monsoon today. Like, it is raining, cats and dogs. I think we've had already over an inch of rain, maybe close to an inch and a half now, and it is windy. So my hair is like wet, not just because I've had a shower, but because I was outside, doing my horse stuff. The horses need to be fed and looked after regardless of what the weather is. So, and I had a riding lesson, and yeah. So here I am, ready for coffee chat. All right, so today I want to talk to you guys about consciousness. Now, I have been playing with these tools. Hey, Barb, hi. I've been playing with these tools and these tools, I mean the tools of Access Consciousness, for about 6 years now, since I very first heard of them. And I heard, now it's hard to explain in words, but I actually was just listening to a video this morning by Dr. Dane here, who is one of the founders, or one of the co-founders of Access Consciousness, and he described it in this most amazing way, and I wrote it down so I could read it to you guys. So consciousness is a level of awareness of what's really going on and of what our choices create. Now, it took me a little while to wrap my head around that my choices create something. And it's true, every choice you make creates a future for you. And when you can kind of get that, you start to empower yourself to create your life based on your choices. Now, we can get really hung up on what to choose and what not to choose and trying to make the right choice. And that is all judgment. Hi, Parita. That is all judgment, and that just stops us from choosing because we're trying to get the right choice. Another thing that they talk about in consciousness is there's no right or wrong. There is no right and there's no wrong. There's just choice. And from each choice we make, we get an awareness. And then again, back to Dr. Dane's description, he says to have no judgment of those choices, but to look for possibilities where other people may not even know they exist. That is consciousness. And everything has consciousness. The earth has a consciousness. The bed I'm sitting on right now, it has a consciousness. It has an energetic presence. Our bodies have a consciousness. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is the consciousness of our bodies and how they are so brilliant. So some of you may or may not know, my dad had a heart attack a couple of weeks ago on June 20th, actually. So he was hiking in the mountains with my mom and one of my brothers and his wife, and they were hiking. And they hiked up to the top of the mountain, and he was good. My brother, was conscious. My dad is 60, and he's not like in super great shape. So my brother, we took lots of breaks, da-da-da-da-da. Dad seemed fine. They came down to the bottom. Hi, Michelle. They got down to the bottom of the mountain, and they had a break. There was an area to sit after they were done their hike. And they had a snack and some water, and they were walking back to the vehicles. And then my dad, sometimes he kind of does his own thing and he hangs back a little bit. And my brother just went going ahead and just kind of said, "Hey, Dad, I'll meet you back at the vehicle, whenever you're ready." And so my brother got back to the vehicle with my mom and his wife, and Dad didn't show up at all. So, of course, they got a little bit worried, and my brother went back to check on my dad and went around a corner, saw that there was a man collapsed on the ground, and there was people, already a group around him responding to him. And my brother, you just, like, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. So he ran up and he called my mom and said, "Hey, you need to come, like, something happened to Dad." And he had a heart attack. He had a heart attack. Now, my dad is doing fine today. Man, the way things played out, truly amazing. There was actually a cardiac surgeon who was right in the very near vicinity of my dad, when they called for help, when the people who saw my dad collapse unconscious on the ground called for help. There was an off-duty cardiac surgeon, his wife and his son, and they were hiking that trail for the very first time. And they heard that call for help and they responded. And there was already people doing CPR, and he took over and he saved him. I mean, saved him. They took him to Canmore Hospital to start with, and then they sent him to Calgary right away, where he stayed in Calgary, recovering. They did a whole bunch of tests. They weren't sure what happened to begin with. They had to stuff, and then they had to give his body time to get strong before his heart surgery. And so when they did the angiogram on his heart, the blockages were phenomenal. Like 100% blocked was one of them, 80%, 90%, 70%. Wow. It actually, when I consider how this could have happened, if he had had that heart attack anywhere else, I know actually he would be dead, he wouldn't be with us today, but he had it there, where he had amazing first response and really close to a major hospital who could give him the care he needed right away. And so he had his 5 bypass surgery a week ago on Monday, so just over a week ago now. And he's back home. Him and my mom came home a couple days ago, and he's recovering amazingly and so good. And so, like, wow, I am so grateful and I'm so amazed. And my dad has been into this consciousness stuff for probably as long as I have been, maybe even more. He actually took one of my first bars classes that I facilitated probably 3 or 4 years ago now. And he has been talking. You can talk to your body. Like, you can ask your body questions about the things it wants to eat, the things it likes. You can start with muscle testing. Google muscle testing. That's how I started talking to my body, asking it, body, do you want to eat this? Body, do you really need to eat right now, or do I just think you need to eat right now? And playing with that engagement, even asking your body what it wants to wear, because your body does have a consciousness of its own. And when my dad, my senses, I haven't fully had this conversation with him yet, but I know that he has been more health conscious in the last 5 years, maybe even the last decade. And he's been doing a lot of research about living longer, living a healthier lifestyle. And he has a lot of grandkids now, and he wants to get old with them and do things with them, and probably with me and my brothers, his kids too. He wants to live longer and adventure more. And so he started this conversation with his body, maybe even without even knowing it, this getting healthier thing. And probably this heart attack may have came on a lot sooner had he not been doing what he has been doing. And his demand in his world to change this, to have a greater, fuller life with his body, I believe, is what created this outcome the way that it did. Because after his 5 bypass surgery, he is going to be stronger. He is going to be healthier. He's going to feel better. He's going to have a better quality of life than he did before. When you're only getting 20 or 30% of the blood flow through your arteries to your heart. He was tired a lot. He liked to have naps, and we just thought that was Dad. Like, oh, Dad just likes to nap. No. And so I wonder, when you ask for a change in your life, it never, ever shows up like you think it will. Ever. And I did a whole SoundCloud clip on the change that I have been asking for showing up in my life in the most craziest ways this last couple of weeks. You know, it's kind of starting before what happened with my dad for myself. If we didn't, what is this really creating, you know? And I can see the relationship in my mom and dad now is changing. It has changed since then. You know, when you almost lose your spouse, the person you've had in your life, it changes you. And it can change you in any way, but it changes you. And if you're willing to have no judgment, like Dr. Dane here says about consciousness, if you're willing to have no judgment, but to look for possibilities where others may not even know they exist, then what else is actually possible? I know my brother, and my mom too, probably, so same with my sister-in-law, they felt so bad for leaving my dad behind, you know, and not being there for him when he had his heart attack. But what if that's how he wanted it? You know, this is not a conscious thought process. My dad did not think, oh, I'm going to have a heart attack now. I'm just going to hang back so they're not here. No, it's not like with your brain. But on some energetic level, I mean, he probably didn't want them to see him collapse and have that happen. So the universe has your back. And the people who responded to him very first, the people who saw him laying unconscious, they rolled him over and they started calling for help. And that is when the cardiac surgeon heard them and came. And so what if, you know, you can always go into what if, and that's how it played out. And what else is possible? If you can stay in the question, what else is actually possible? I know that this outcome doesn't always happen for a lot of people. You know, my father-in-law died of a massive heart attack probably like 7 years ago now, in 2013. And that created a whole lot of change for everybody. I mean, and that is the part of my life where I started looking for what is my life? What is life really? Not just my life, but what is life really for in this world, you know? My father-in-law was an amazing man. He worked hard, he was generous, he was kind, and he was amazing. And he had a heart attack and he died 7 years ago. But what that created for me was, and then my grandma actually also died. Some of you may already know this story. My grandma died a couple weeks after him, and I was very close to both of them. But what that created for me was, it sent me searching for what my life is really for. Like, what do I want to experience in my life? You know, when that's when I found Access through Glenise Hughes, listening to one of her radio shows and receiving a bar session. And that's when I got to explore me, like, and what a life worth living is for me. And that's when I found Access bars. And that is when, you know, all of this stuff started changing for me. I started having a life worth living. And what is that? And that is going to be different for each one of us. And I guarantee it, my dad is going to start looking at that even more now. What is a life worth living for him? He's literally got a second chance, kind of. And with my mom, you know, like, I can't imagine almost losing my husband. Like, I mean, not that I'm an independent, so this is kind of where I get hung up too. I don't need him for anything. I'm very independent, but at the same time, he's a huge contribution to my life. And when I consider him not being there, that changes everything, you know. And I wonder how this is going to invite my mom to be with my dad. And, you know, I remember when my daughter Helena broke her arm in April. And she needed me again. You know, she needed me to help her bath and help her wash her hair. And she needed me to help her with things again. And it reminded me of, time goes too fast. She grew up way too fast, and I became more grateful to help her with things, whereas before I was pushing her to be more independent. And so I got to have that time with her again, and I allowed myself to be with her in that way even more. So I know my dad's body it didn't consciously, but it created something that my dad was asking for in his life, and it never shows up like you think it will. And I was talking about my brother feeling guilty about not being there. And yeah. And when you go to guilt, you are distracting yourself from receiving the possibilities. When you go to the judgment of your choices, you're distracting yourself. You're stopping yourself and you're sticking yourself in place with that. I also had another gal type in, she asked if I could talk about forgiveness. And she's just playing with these tools. She's been in a couple of my classes, and she's received a lot of change already. But she's like, Catherine, like, how can I forgive myself for my past and the past choices that I've made? Well, if to forgive yourself requires you to judge yourself as wrong. Have you ever considered the possibility of what if you are not wrong? What if your past choices were not wrong? Because every single choice you make has gotten you to where you are today. Today, all of those past choices got you here today. And if you weren't wrong, what do you have to forgive? I mean, what are you refusing to receive about your choices and your life from back then that if you would receive them would set you free? You know, with forgiveness, like forgiveness is also another stuck thing. Forgiving other people, you know, for whatever they do, I get it. And at the same time, if you didn't have a judgment of how they act and just acknowledge that they're acting as they're acting because they're acting that way and it has nothing to do about you, then you can carry on with your life and not get stuck on how they're acting and not have to worry about forgiving them because they're just making a choice and you're just making a choice. And every choice you make creates your life and creates your future. So what future do you want to be having? Okay. So now, making your choice, how do you make choices? Well, you look at the energy of what this choice, you ask the question. There's this really cool question. Truth, what will my life be like in 5 years if I choose this? And you get a sense of that energy. Or you can use muscle testing. Truth, body, yes or no? Should we choose to do this class? Yes or no? Okay. And then go from there. My dad, when he wanted to go hiking, like he's never wanted to go hiking before. It still amazes me that he went, but he's been asking for change in his life, and his body led him to that mountain. His body created so my mom wouldn't be there by herself when this happened. His body maybe even created the cardiac surgeon to be right there to save him when it happened, so he would not die, because in his body he didn't want to die now. But he had a demand to change something, and that whole event and the surgery and everything after is what was required for him to change what he was asking to change. And my father-in-law, he died, but I took that and I started looking for possibilities, you know, and that led me to the bars class. That led me to teaching so many people about bars and consciousness already, and my dad being one of them, and my mom, she's taken bars classes too. And so consciousness is a level of awareness of what's really going on and of what your choices create. It's powerful. And to have no judgment of those choices, but to look for possibility where others may not even know it exists. So, what is a life worth living for you? And how can you start to choose that for you? And know that when you ask for change to show up in your life, it never shows up like you think it will. Ever. That is one thing that has always proven itself true. And there's two questions that I use them a lot, and I've really used them a lot this last couple of weeks with what's shown up for me. Truth, is this the change I've been asking for showing up in a totally different way? Yes. And truth, does the universe have my back? Yes. Because I can't control how it shows up for me. That's another thing. The more we try to control all of the things around us, the more we actually destroy what we're creating, and we're not allowing receiving of what can actually show up. And so if this and you learn a lot of tools in a bars class, if this conversation intrigues you at all and you want more, you can check out accessconsciousness.com. You can search for a bars class. The bars is the very first class in Access Consciousness, core classes. And you learn about the bars and this magical energetic body processes that can allow you to energetically release limitations in your life and allow you to create change and allow you to consciously create your life with your body. And I touched my head because the bars is 32 points on the head when you pull energy through them. And so you can go to accessconsciousness.com, search for a bars class in your area, and just start to explore. And I wonder, and then, you know what, if this conversation doesn't intrigue you at all, then that's fine. And if you're happy the way you are, that is amazing. I am so happy for you, and I'm grateful. All right. I hope this conversation was a contribution to you. And if it was, I would be really grateful if you wanted to share this video on Facebook somewhere. All right, you guys. I adore you, and have an amazing rest of your day, and bye-bye for now.